The Sixers have hired Doc Rivers. That we know. They have not officially announced it yet. I haven't seen the Sixers officially announce it, but it's a 5-year deal, according to reports, and he will be the next Sixers head coach. Do we like the move? Michael Kaskey-Blomain covers the Sixers in the NBA for CBS Sports. He wrote about it last night, why he thought that was the right move for the 76ers, at least over Mike D'Antoni, who was the presumptive favorite last week. So I want to start with this, Michael, as we bring him in on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. How did it go from Lou being the guy to D'Antoni being the guy to them hiring Doc Rivers? What was the kind of mindset that kind of changed from, hey, we want Lou, to, hey, we want Mike D'Antoni, to then, hey, we want Doc Rivers?
Well, it's funny, Mike. The main thing that I kept hearing, since Brett was fired about the Sixers coaching search was that they wanted a big name with a lot of postseason experience. That was basically the qualifications. I know some names were floated around, assistants and college coaches and things like that. But, the indication that I got was that this search was always about replacing Brett with an established head coach that's, respected and well-known around the league and that has, a pretty good amount of playoff experience under his belt. And at first, Ty Lue fit that bill, obviously, as a guy that took the Cavs to 3 straight finals and won with LeBron in 2016. And he looked like he was potentially the most attractive guy available. And then it was kind of just the falling of dominoes as the postseason went on. Then the Rockets parted ways with Mike D'Antoni. And that interest dates back to, 2015 when he was serving as an assistant under Brett Brown. Some people in the Sixers front office and ownership group, thought that he would be a good head coach for the team at that point. It didn't happen. Obviously, he went to Houston, but now, once he became available again, that interest obviously popped back up, and he was looking like it was going to be him. Obviously, for a week or so, the reports were that it was his job to lose. And then at the last minute, I think if this Doc thing hadn't, if the Clippers hadn't have fired him at the beginning of this week, it's very likely the Sixers would have went ahead with the hiring of Mike D'Antoni. But the Doc thing happened at the final hour, and they, it was a guy that both Elton Brand and the ownership agreed upon that would be a good fit, and they brought him in, and things moved quickly.
All right, so let me get your thoughts then. Would you have rather seen Mike D'Antoni or Doc Rivers?
No, out of those two, I definitely think Doc Rivers was the correct hire. I definitely wasn't big on D'Antoni being the guy for, several reasons. The most obvious being that, he's had a ton of success, obviously, in the regular season. Nash got 2 MVPs with him. Harden got an MVP with him. He's had, historic teams in those 7 seconds or less Suns, these Rockets teams. But he's never, been able to take a team, not even to win a finals, but he's never taken a team to the finals. Where Doc obviously has the finals experience that he gained with Boston. He won in 2008. He lost to the Lakers in 2010. And I think that right there, that experience is what the Sixers are looking for. They want a coach that can get them. They've been to the second round 2 years in a row. And then obviously this year they were swept in the first round. They wanted a guy that could take them to the next level. And then just the fit of, Mike D'Antoni's a one-trick pony, for lack of a better word. He has a system that it's, he's been instrumental in implementing, and it's gone, really popular and gained popularity throughout the league. But that's what he's going to do. He's going to space the floor. He's going to get out in transition. He's going to shoot threes. And it just, it didn't mesh with what the Sixers had. Even if they were going to make some trades to, fit his potential system, like was reported, it would take almost a complete overhaul of their roster to, build a team that would fit his preferred style of play. And Doc is, a little bit more open. He used post players, obviously in Boston with KG and Perkins, and then in LA with, Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. So I think and the defensive side of things too, obviously he's a more, places more emphasis on defense. And when you got guys like Ben and Joel that are, great defensive players, I think you want a coach that can tap into that side too, which is something, D'Antoni's not known for. So overall, I definitely think Doc was the right choice out of those two.
Yeah, before I ask this question, I just want to clarify that I really do support the pickup of Doc Rivers. I think it's going to be tremendous for this team. But, there were a loud majority of people out there that hated Brett Brown, can't get past the second round, blown a lot of leads. When you do look at Doc Rivers over the last handful of seasons, you saw 3-1 series leads being blown. You saw some big leads in specific games being blown as well. And once again, I think he's a good coach for this team. You need some stability. You need a very well-respected voice, which is what you got. But if you want to look from the production standpoint over the last couple of seasons, you would say that he was underwhelming a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I think you could say his entire tenure with the Clippers was, maybe a little bit overwhelming given some of the expectations at first that Lob City team had, and they were never able to, get out of the second round. And then the team this year that flamed out. And I do think, it's a bit of a concern. He's the only coach in NBA history to blow, not only 2, but now after this year, 3-1 series leads in the postseason. He did it, this year with the Clippers again in 2015, and then back when he had Tracy McGrady in Orlando, I think it was 2003. And that's a concern. This year specifically, it's fresh on our minds. We saw, the Nuggets make adjustments, and especially offensively, and do things, and the Clippers were slow to react, slow to, make changes from game to game, and they looked they didn't have an identity offensively or defensively. But with that said, I think that team, had some unique circumstances in being that they were, kind of just put together last offseason. They dealt with injury issues throughout the year, and it just felt like they could never, get the chemistry gelling. I think Sixers are hoping that, Doc will bring a little bit more of the chemistry that he became lauded for during those years in Boston, where he really united, the big three and those guys, and brought, showed that he could manage multiple stars and egos, and have them focused on a common goal. I think they're hoping that he can tap into that in Ben and Joel. And, the 3-1 thing is, a circumstance by circumstance thing. I think it's definitely something you have to point out and consider, but it's, I don't think you can definitely say that moving forward, given a new situation, new circumstances, that he's not going to be able to, make the correct adjustments for this team, given the other available options, especially that were out there for them. I think that he was, tactically and in terms of the respect and just the name that you alluded to, I think he was, basically fit everything that they were looking for.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain, CBS Sports NBA writer, covers the Sixers. Who do you think? Who are you more intrigued to see this work with, Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid?
That's a great question. If it was D'Antoni, obviously, I think we all would have been really interested to see how he would use Joel in the system that he preferred. Under Doc, I think both of them will be, it'll be interesting to see how he utilizes them. And I think things has done in the past should give, Sixers fans a little bit of hope for the way that he's going to use them. Specifically, Ben, he obviously, he coached Rondo really well, who at that time, didn't really space the floor, but he put him in a lot of pick and roll situations at the top of the key, and, was letting him kind of pick the floor apart and make some passes. And then, Joel, I think it'll be a situation where maybe he'll get to use him, in different circumstances. He'll spend some time in the post, probably space him out a little bit, but it's going to be a situation where I think we'll see a lot more pick and roll than we saw with Brett. Things like that. That's something that Doc has used throughout his career. So, I'm interested to see how he uses both of them, honestly.
Now, they haven't made it official yet, but we are hearing that on paper he's not going to be involved in many front office decisions. It's just going to be coaching. But do you think that that's reality? Because I would think Doc Rivers is coming in here. He's probably going to have some say with some sort of roster moves and personnel decisions.
Yeah, that's a great question. And from what I was told by, a Sixers team source, was that front office role was not part of the discussion when the teams met. It was strictly that he would be here in a coaching capacity, not what he did in LA, where he was the VP of basketball operations for several seasons. But with that said, I don't think that means that he's going to be, completely out of the loop here. The Sixers obviously kept, they had Brett Brown involved in the decision-making process for a lot of the time, and I think they'll do the same with Doc, especially, given his resume and the background that he has. I think that he'll, want to be somewhat involved in building the roster out that he's going to be using moving forward. And I think that they'll certainly, let him have some input. Now, with that being said, he's not going to have, the final say on decisions. If he came in and immediately said he wanted to trade Joel or something, I'm sure that would get pushed back. But in terms of building out the roster and how he likes to play, the best teams, there is a cohesive effort between the front office and the coaching staff. And I think that's, hopefully what the Sixers are going to try to look to put in place.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain, obviously, to me, the biggest positive here, the X's and O's stuff on game night, it's a players' league, players play. Yeah, the coach, has a role on game night. But to me, the biggest role is behind closed doors in that locker room. Did Doc Rivers make Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons mature? Can he make them better players? Can he get more from Ben Simmons? Can he get more from Joel Embiid? Can he get Joel Embiid in shape? Those are the more important things to me than anything he's going to bring on game night.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mike. And my answer to that is I think as well as anyone that was on the market would be able to, I think he's the guy for that. He comes to Philadelphia with a lot of respect from players and coaches across the league. He's a guy, before these guys were even in the league, he was coaching the Celtics and that big three team. He's coached, a plethora of future Hall of Famers, starting with McGrady, all the guys in Boston, obviously Chris Paul, Kawhi, Paul George, Blake. He's a ton of talent, and I think he's established himself. Been to 2 finals. He's top 10 in all-time wins in regular season and postseason. He's right there. He just he has a lot of a really impressive resume, and I think for guys like Ben and Joel who had only played for Brett Brown over the course of their career since they've been drafted, and again not to knock Brett, but he was maybe a guy that they became a little bit comfortable with, and he didn't have that cachet to fall back on. I mean, he was obviously an assistant in San Antonio, but that, head coaching experience that Doc brings, I think that will kind of command some immediate respect from those guys. And I think it will help, from the top down to, help the team take more accountability. Doc has always been a guy that's pretty big on accountability, for his roster and for a team where they had players coming out after this past season that said they, lacked accountability at times. I think that having, an established, respected voice like Doc in the locker room could, be a really big step for this team.
He's Michael Kaskey-Blomain, the 76ers. By the way, there are some reports that they're interested in Alvin Gentry to be an assistant. I think that would be an excellent, I think one of the things with Brett's staff is he had a very inexperienced staff. Getting Gentry would really make this a great hire.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mike. I think that's, you nailed that. Another guy that's really well respected and liked by the players and that has a lot of experience, which is, like you said, kind of the opposite of Brett's staff when he was here. There was a lot of guys that were kind of unknown and fresh in the, behind the ears. And now that's guys obviously like Doc, and if they can bring in Alvin Gentry, potentially another guy from the Clippers bench, like maybe a Sam Cassell, something like that, I think that they would be in a really good position.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain, of course, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Follow him at The Real Mike KB. Michael, thanks, pal.
Thanks for having me on, fellas. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. One of the best when it comes to the NBA. CBS Sports, formerly from 97.3 ESPN.com. He knows his roots, man.